We've talked time and time again about these warm waters, but you wrote for Forbes that recent storms caused cold wakes, but Atlantic water is still running hot. Are these cold wakes helpful at all in diluting these storms?
They theoretically can be. I mean, when hurricanes like Idalia that we saw recently make landfall in Florida moves up into the Carolinas and then out to sea, storms like that can churn up the deep, colder water, and so future storms that move over them can actually, in some cases, be suppressed. But I don't really foresee that being a big issue for the rest of the season because, again, the waters are running so hot that those temporary upwelling of cold waters that we see, those tend to only last, they're temporary. So I think the ocean state will relax back to its warm state, and so we'll have to keep watching over the next 6 weeks.
Another thing you tell us to pay attention to is the messaging around hurricanes, and you wrote, "Be cautious of urban bias in hurricane communication." Can you elaborate on that for us?
This is something I'm very cognizant of when I write for Forbes. One of the things that I kept hearing about when Idalia was making landfall in northern Florida, and people didn't mean anything by it. They didn't mean any harm. It's just was sort of the inertia of what they were saying. It was like, thankful that it's making landfall there because there aren't that many people there. And what they certainly are trying to say is that there are less people than, say, a big city like Houston or New Orleans or Miami, and so there will be likely less potential for damage or loss of life. However, it can have the misintention of suggesting that those lives in those more rural or less populated areas are less valuable, and that's not the case at all. So I just kind of urge people to kind of be cognizant of that when you're doing risk communication, because it's absolutely a fact that there would be more impact of a major hurricane in a larger city. But I think we need to find a way to sort of say both, that that's the case, but also we value those lives in those smaller rural communities as well. And so that's really all I meant by that. And also, there were cities like Perry, Florida, Madison, Florida, Valdosta, Georgia, smaller cities that took a beating from Hurricane Idalia. They're going to be recovering for weeks to months in advance. It's important that we give those recovery efforts attention as well, because I imagine if it had been a big city like New Orleans or Houston, we'd still be talking about Idalia right now.
I'm sure. And how would you suggest people shift their language here? Because I'm sure the intent isn't to minimize the devastation or anything about the lives lost there, but the impact doesn't match.
Yeah, I think it's important that we just say both. We say that, because it's not impacting a larger populated area, there's likely to be less aggregate damage or loss of life. However, in the places that it is going to be impacting, there's potential for life-altering, life-changing consequences. And so I think it's just important that we say both.
Dr. Shepard, per usual, I really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for joining me.